Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today we're going to tap into a lot of different topics that reflect around mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. Hell, let's get right down to the point. Overall health. Today on the show, we have a young lady who has started a non-for-profit organization that addresses 5 stages of health that all individuals need to be aware of. On this show, we do provide education and resources, and we're doing the same today. I'd like to welcome to the show Shereeta Lacy to the show. Shereeta Lacy to the show. I was close. You know, it's so funny. Every time, these names that people have are like so beautiful, and I have the hardest time pronouncing them. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's get down to it by start asking, who exactly is Miss Lacy?
Oh, wow. She is a community resource, a connector, a mother, a daughter, a friend, a goddaughter, a niece. She is resilient and kind. She's a revolutionary, and she is diehard about community economic development and Black people. So,
Wow.
I would say
That's a lot of information. Yeah.
humanity, but obviously we are, brown folks, and so it is a concern for me to take what I've been able to learn to transform my life and be able to bring that kind of healing to my community.
You mentioned community and you mentioned healing. Those are some powerful words. Were you born and raised in Indianapolis?
I was.
What was it like growing up? Because when you mentioned community and healing, there must have been a combination of maybe trauma and things that wasn't healthy that you grew up with. Explain that a little bit. And was that even a situation growing up with you?
Part of it was, yeah. And what I realized was that it's the trauma that is unhealed that gets in the way. So that's what has you block. That's what has you stop. It's the internal dialogue that you have about who you are, and then needing to go back and remember who you really are, which is what was the catalyst for starting the process. So my life here, from age birth to 7, is when I lived in Indianapolis, and then my mother moved away to Arizona at that time, and then I got to grow up in Arizona from age 7 to age about 13.
What part? Scottsdale, Phoenix?
Phoenix.
Okay.
I went to school in Central Phoenix. My mother still lives in Glendale. I got to spend a lot of time in Paradise Valley and in Scottsdale because my mother was an entrepreneur when I was young, when we were living there. So she probably worked, she worked at like Mercedes, and she worked at the Biltmore the first like year that we lived there. And then after that, she started her own business. And I spent a lot of time with her at her clients' homes, which were beautiful, amazing homes.
What were some of the things that you saw that troubled you growing up?
So growing up, I didn't have a bad childhood. My mother did an amazing job. She was a very spiritually led woman and still is. And so she just was very open with me. We grew up together. My mother was only 17 years old when she had me. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents before I went to Arizona. So I just got to grow up having these contrasts in life. And so by the time I was 5 years old, I had a very traumatic incident happen with my mother's boyfriend at the time. And so the violence, that is when confrontation became warlike because it was such a violent exchange for a child to have to go through. So I just saw this person. So he was shooting up heroin in the bathroom, and I walked into the bathroom, and I didn't know what he was doing, so I asked. And I remember it like it was yesterday, and he just kind of picked me up and threw me out of the bathroom. And when I just hit the wall, my mom jumps up, of course, to defend me. And I remember going out of the room, as a child, and you self-soothe. I'm sitting there playing with my stuff, like just pocketing that away from myself. But I could hear this commotion. And when I came out of the room, I just saw this man just repeatedly, like he was in a trance, just slapping my mother, just back and forth and back and forth. And I remember the feeling of the adrenaline going through my body. But I was afraid of the dark, so I wouldn't go downstairs and get the black frying pan because that's what I saw to do on cartoons, right? And just beat him with the black frying pan. And I remember trying to use a backgammon game, like my little Connect Four, just trying to break this person out of this like trance. from like beating my mother. And I remember seeing the iron sitting on the ironing board. We lived at the corner of 49th and Illinois at this time, and my grandmother lived in the 5000 block of Kenwood. And so I remember seeing the iron and just grabbing the iron and just bashing this man in the head until he fell unconscious. So when a child has to have that kind of rage in order to confront such a violent situation as a child to defend my mother, I just feel like that probably molded me to be a person, a woman that was very defensive about other women, was very into justice for people, and certain things just become intolerable for me. I'm one of those people that if I was to see someone being hurt out in the public, I would have to step in and say something because it just made a part of who I am. So whatever that story is that I created around needing to defend women, needing to defend myself, it probably came from that initial incident. And then there were just incidents as we went along because she was a young woman and a young mother.
So your mother at 17 years old meets this man and had no idea of his heroin addiction.
No, I think he came along later in my life. I was probably around 4 when she met him.
But you mentioned that this was not the only incident. Am I correct? That
right. Eventually in Arizona, my mother got married. And I mean, I pulled a knife on my stepfather when I was 9 years old because, I just saw him do something to my mother. Like he bit her. I woke up in the middle of the night and I could see like through my door that my mother slid the door open to let the dog out. And I mean, this was a very Christian context too. So this was a person who was very into the church, played music in the church, and we went to a mega church back then. So we're talking about the 80s, and in Central Phoenix, and we go to church in a huge like 5,000 member church back then. And I went to the same school as my church, so everybody knew who we were. You know what I mean, so to speak. Because he played in the music ministry in the church. So to see this person act in a way that does not line up with these values that you say.
So was he on drugs or he was just angry?
He was just weird and mean. And he wasn't ever really mean to me per se. He just was passive aggressive in a way. And so my mom had slid the door to let the dog out, and he locked my mother out. She was letting the dog out, and he pushed the door like he wasn't going to let her back in. And then she was like, what? And I remember him sliding the door back, my mom coming in and her being like, why would you do that? And he just bit her finger. I mean, bit it bad. And to the point that she went out of the apartment, he followed her. I grab a butcher knife and go follow behind the both of them. And I just remember literally holding it to his face. Like,
Your mom sees you doing all this. And I realize that she's young, but she's still your mother.
Right.
Does your mother ever take accountability with the choices that she makes? Did not put you in that situation? Because I could see it happening once, but then I would start saying, maybe I'm not making the right healthy choices as it involves my own safety and more importantly, my daughter's safety. You're young and you're putting a knife to somebody's throat, and hitting them with frying pans. Did your mom make better choices, or how did you come out of this?
I feel like my mother, and this is a really great question because it's a great segue into like the development of the work. So like my mother, what I knew was that it wasn't like you can't make choices. If you make choices from that traumatized place, it's survival, right? And so my mother was always surviving her circumstances. And so but what it did for me though was it just made me very courageous. It just made me a person who was stand for justice. Part of it made me who I am. My mother is very resilient, very strong, very smart. And at this time, she didn't have a mother. So who she was for me, she wasn't able to have anymore. And I just was very young when I realized.
You said she didn't have a mother.
My grandmother passed away. That's why we moved to Arizona.
I got you. Okay.
So she didn't have a person, and then she didn't have that kind of relationship with my grandfather. He had remarried, And it just wasn't like that. My
Where was
grandfather
your
worked on the
father?
farm. So my father still lived in Indianapolis. And part of how I came back to Indianapolis was wanting to be closer to my father and to my family, because both sides of my family, live here. Like, I know where we originate from, like Louisiana and Memphis and things like that. But all of my family still lived in Indianapolis.
Did your mother, even though she was 17, have any type of relationship with your father, even though you guys relocated?
Sure, but it was very estranged. Like, it was a lot of anger and a lot of hurt and a lot of bitterness back then. Like, my father would just talk about my mother all the time.
And your mom, vice versa?
No, my mother never talked about my father.
Really?
My mother never. My mother never spoke an unkind word about my father ever in my life. My father and my stepmother would talk about my mother ad infinitum. Like, it was, but as I got older and you get emotional maturity, I know that's just hurt. That's just pain. It wasn't until last year that my father and I had a conversation where I ever even told him any of these things that happened throughout my childhood. So he never even knew. It wasn't like I was going to call my dad and be like, hey, I did such and such. You know what I mean? It just wasn't. It wasn't like that.
When you shared it, what happened? What was his response?
I think that it probably hurt his feelings, but my father's a very practical and logical and rational person. He's not an emotionally reactive person like that. So I think it probably hurt him to know that I had been through those kinds of experiences. But he's logical enough to know that, that was 30 plus years ago. There's nothing he could really do about that now. Mm-hmm. But he knows, he's always told me that I was very strong, told me that I've always been a survivor like my mother. I remember when I was pregnant for the second time, and even though, I just remember my father being like, I'm still proud of you, or just, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. So I just feel like, to be young people, I had really solid parents. You know what I mean? My parents were 17, 19 years old. You're talking about the late 70s. My grandparents had the wherewithal to take care of me in ways that my parents could not. And so when you are emotionally mature, you're just grateful. You're grateful for all of it. You don't have regrets because you understand that these things helped you to develop what you created in life. And there's so much to that too, because I also had to make sure that I wasn't developing this work as like a fix for what is wrong with women or Black people or anything like that. It's really important that it comes from a space of what's possible and not what's wrong.
You mentioned Black people, but this isn't just the situations that just happen to people of color.
No.
So is the organization that you created, WOMB, the WOMB Agency, does it also focus on other cultures as well?
So I have relatedness, which is the first step, right? And so I can relate to all women, mostly through being a mother. I can relate to all women because we have the same parts, and our body chemistry and parts typically work the same. And so I can relate to women across the board, no matter the socioeconomic standing that they have. So the work works for anyone. But the relatedness that Black women need, the space that we need to have certain types of conversations, to deal with certain types of pain, because we haven't already always listening of others, sometimes that gets in the way, and we're not as fully self-expressed when the focus is not really on us and our particular experiences as Black women.
Explain a little bit. Give me like 3 examples.
So I'll give you a great example. I started out in Indianapolis. So I started out with my elders, first of all. I started out training in a company called Scarabis. There was a man named Imhotep Adisa, who is still an amazing, incredible person in the community. And that was one of my first amazing real mentors, right? And I had plenty before him and since him. But that was really like the beginning and the catalyst. Hold on, you're going to have to edit this part because I got to remember. Where was we going with this? What you asked me?
I said, what was...
Examples. You asked me examples of that.
Yeah.
So in working with them...
That just means you're passionate. So you got so much information going.
And so in working with Imhotep, I got involved in a company called Beyond Your Best. And Beyond Your Best was amazing. It still exists. It's just under a different company name called Zarvos Coaching and Leadership Training or something like that. Jim Zarvos was a game changer in my life. Imhotep was the first person to ever hold the mirror up. But these were like elders, and they were Black people. And so who I got to be inside of their listening is different. When I get to Zarvos, most of these people are white. So they feel like we should have race handled. You know what I mean? Because these are the tools of transformation.
That
So
happened in
race
the past
should be
200
handled.
years ago. Why are we
And
still
it's
talking
also
about
the
it?
meaning that you assign it. It's also your identity. It's so many things that play into that. So I have all the understanding in the world about why the transformation community does not really focus on race. However, when I'm there and you're in these personal and professional trainings, there is these opportunities to share. If the person that is listening, if you're in my listening, I need your listening to come from your relatedness. And if you can't relate, it's just going to be that much more of a challenge for me to really feel safe and open up and let my guard down to talk about things that I think you might not. So, for instance, by the time I was in Beyond Your Best, I was already, my daughter's father had been locked up. My other kid's father, longer down in the journey, had been murdered. Well, please edit that out. My child's father had been killed in a tragic motorcycle accident. And so I was dealing with the baby daddy, baby mama thing in the community. I'm dealing with a parent being locked up and dealing with living in Section 42 public housing. It's not that white people couldn't relate to that. It's just that the wealthy people, we were right here in this building, as a matter of fact, at that time, doing these trainings right here. And so there were no Black people, not a part of the staff, not a part of the leadership, and not even as far as the participants were concerned. So for me, if I start talking about things that are race-based and you're white, I don't know what's in your listening. I don't know if you're going to be defensive. I don't know if that's going to offend you. So I might not share as much. I might not be able to get the healing the way I really need to get it because of what's going on in my listening, and that is on me. But as a wellnesspreneur, as my friend Katrina would say, as an entrepreneur, as a social entrepreneur. So I really carry the distinction of being a social entrepreneur, and I develop social enterprise concepts because my mindset is always going to go back to the development of the community, right? And so if I'm dealing with a situation inside of a training and there's no relatedness, or I feel like everybody in here is white, I'm going to automatically have a listening of the people in the group that they might not be able to make a difference for me. So it's going to take a lot of trust. So I like to focus on Black women because we need those safe spaces to heal from things that might be unique to us. The circumstance might not be unique. That might be across the board. But the way I identify, my culture, the way I speak, those are things that another Black woman is just going to relate to, and I'm going to feel safer in her care when it comes to that. And most of the people that I encounter that are not Black, that are in this work, they understand that.
You mentioned 5 areas of wellness that your company focuses on. What are those 5 areas, and why is these areas so important for overall mental development, not only for a woman, but men, white, Black, Asian?
Right.
I mean, what is the concept with the 5, and what are the 5?
So the 5 areas that I like to focus on first is nutrition. And I like because there's a gut-brain connection, right? So what you need for your brain is manufactured in your gut.
So you're telling me when
Don't
I say
go to
I'm going to
McDonald's.
McDonald's to get them fries, don't go there. Okay.
Because your body really doesn't know what all those things are, right? The body doesn't know what these different chemicals are. They don't recognize them. They recognize them as foreign. So all food has a code, right? Like you wouldn't just put anything in your computer because it could get a virus. But we eat that way. Now, I'm not perfect at it, right? So we give ourselves a lot of grace and compassion. You can eat a food that is good for you, but if you feel bad about that food, or you have some judgment or some type of emotion about that food, you might as well have just eaten the beef. For the Boca burgers and the Morningstar burgers and all of these fake meat products, substitutes, some people are just not into animal flesh. That's fine. But what I learned is that veganism is not synonymous to health. So
explain that.
So being a vegan doesn't mean you're healthy. It doesn't mean you know how to eat. So nutrition is critical because it's like what's good for you might not be good for me.
Right.
So I met this beautiful man who's a functional medicine practitioner. His name is Anis Santisi, and he's our head coach. And so I got in his coaching program, and it changed my life. I had so many health problems, but when I was going to the doctor was like, "Oh, you're fine. Your blood levels, look great, you're fine. But I was tired all the time. But it turns out that I had adrenal fatigue. I had an overgrowth of yeast in the gut, which causes you to have leaky gut, where toxins and undigested food literally secrete out into your bloodstream, and it will make you feel crazy.
Why didn't the doctors know that?
Because they don't have the tools. They're
What do you
not
mean?
trained in the distinctions of nutrition, and they don't get so we use something called a functional health report when we do labs. The laboratory that we work with is named Abexia, and as coaches, we're able to work with this lab, and they have the doctors that are trained in these distinctions that give us the interpretations. And then as coaches, we help you where you get stopped, where you get blocked in the world of nutrition, because we know that has everything to do with your mental health, right? Mm-hmm. And I focus on the, I'm sorry, we have to go back. The food. You asked me something about the labs, the food. What'd you ask me?
The 5 areas.
No, before that, we were focused on nutrition. You asked for an example about veganism not being synonymous with health. And, okay, so we provide also food sensitivity tests. So a food might be alkaline, but it might not be good for me. So for me, for instance, I had all of those issues, and when he provided this ability for me to have access to these kinds of diagnostics, I found out that I had a food sensitivity, not an allergy, but a food sensitivity to spirulina, to dill, to duck, to egg yolk, but not the whites.
Isn't spirulina a plant-based?
It is, and it's a wonderful
It's
product.
a protein. It's a protein.
Very nutritious for you, but it causes me to have silent inflammation.
Okay.
Pineapple will cause me to have silent inflammation. And yes, you can take them out of your diet for 6 months, heal your gut, and try to reintroduce those foods back into the gut and see how you respond to them. Mm-hmm. Silent inflammation, and from silent inflammation will give you things like maybe a rash or joint pain or a headache, and those things manifest within 12 to 72 hours after taking in the food. And so eczema is definitely a food allergy. Allergies and food sensitivities are not exactly the same. Allergies is going to be, bam, you might need an EpiPen. You're going to break out. Your tongue might swell. It's instant types of reaction to something. But the food sensitivity is a little bit different. So once I had these kinds of tools, I knew that it was really important to focus on nutrition, because we live in food deserts in a lot of instances. So these conversations about food deserts, people not really knowing what to eat, and then wealthy people didn't know. Wealthy people were using his services, so it didn't, just because you had the money didn't necessarily mean you knew. So I knew that the nutritional education was going to be very, very important when I'm talking about a process of holistic transformation.
But it costs money. I deal with nutrition as well as a trainer, and I realize that it costs money to be healthy. And when you're talking about the disadvantage, how do you teach the disadvantage how to take their money and learn to make healthy choices based on the budget? If you have 5, 8 kids in the house, that's kind of a complicated thing, isn't it?
Not really. So people that have a lot of children, it's lack of education. It's mismanagement of funds. So I also deal with a product. It's a nutrition-based product that's called the Juice Plus Company. And I love the Juice Plus Company because, to me, it makes it easy. The best vegan doesn't necessarily get 33 organic fruits and vegetables and plant-based omegas into their system every day. Juice Plus is an easy way for me to be able to introduce that to the community, and it is affordable to me. Now, for me, I reared children in Hallville, USA, in Section 42 public housing, and they were going to the orchard school. Anything is possible if you want it, right? So if you get food stamps, it's the education. Do I know how to budget these stamps? If I have 8 kids in my house, you're getting a lot of food stamps. So how do I budget these stamps? And then do I have the competency to know how to feed each child?
Right.
If they have eczema, I need to get them tested so I know what foods are causing this kind of condition in my child. And when you do that, now you can shop responsibly. If you can't afford that, you can Google a blood type diet. And you can figure out how to eat based on maybe your blood type if you want to go that route. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of ways, from salmon, even if you have to get it out of a can, tuna, beans, whole grains, but real whole grains, not wheat bread, because that's not necessarily a whole grain, and those grains 9 times out of 10 have been sprayed. and they have gluten in them. So do you have a gluten sensitivity, or are you reacting to the glyphosate that's sprayed onto the food? It's education, not necessarily lack of access. That's the way I see it. And I'm talking about people who will still manage to buy $200 tennis shoes living in the ghetto. They might only get one of those a year, but take that $200 and maximize that into their health and into the education that you need to move your family forward. Working with Charles and Culture Through Expression, which got funding from CICF, thank God for the Indianapolis Foundation, we were able to create a cooking show, to show people how to use food that might come in your pantry box. So there's all kinds of people. Find an organization. There are nonprofits out the wazoo in Indianapolis. There's gleaners. Find the organizations and hold them accountable to having quality foods inside of the food pantry boxes, because they spend money on that food also. They also work with farmers. Farmers get subsidized to grow food that goes to gleaners and other places. So it's all kinds of resources in your community. We are in 2024, and so we don't have to be victims about our circumstances. We don't have to be victims about where we live. There's an opportunity to learn and to implement. That's why I love the world of social enterprise, because you can create a business that makes a difference in your community. And I'm at Edna Martin every Friday at 37th Place, teaching young people about social enterprise and the distinction of a social enterprise and being a social entrepreneur than just having a business and making money. Our neighborhoods don't have to be places that we relate to as concrete jungles and places to escape from to go get better resources elsewhere. Create your business and put those resources right there in your own community.
Let's talk about the second part of the 5 journeys here. You talked about nutrition. What's the second one?
So physical health. And I don't necessarily do them in any particular order, right? So coaching is always self-led. It's where the person feels blocked. It's where they feel stopped. And so I just know that covering these 5 domains of health is typically what makes up your emotional health. And this is all about being able to feel better. And so I focus on physical health also. So I'm a yoga teacher, and I got certified through City Yoga about 19 years ago. And the world of yoga is about transformation. It is not just about breathing and bending and stretching in the floor. It is about who you get to be. So it is about the being that we are expressing, and the movement gets us into our body and brings us into awareness, and it gives us a stillness inside of meditation so that we can hear and we can listen. People say, oh, God told me. Well, that's you. That's your inner being. That's your spirit, and so that's who is communicating. You. And you're open to receive and listen to spirit when you are in that stillness of meditation, the quiet inside of your personal yoga practice. So I use yoga, and I use tapping. Tapping is just a way. It's called emotional freedom technique. And we use that to release emotion from the tissues of the body. We tap here and here. We start with karate chopping, tapping. And tapping is a great way to tap along the meridian lines of the body. And it gets you into an awareness, calms the nervous system down. And then you can begin to really be able to think straight. So we are moving out of a reaction, right? A state of reaction, and into just calm.
But this isn't the only part of activity that a person can do. They can walk, run.
They can.
Train, they can do, as long as there's some type of activity. What's the third?
Dance.
Dance.
Get up and dance. Turn on the music.
Okay.
And dance. And these are things, I like things that are like practical that you can do right there from in your home. Okay. So when we talk about walking, running, jogging, I might not have the wherewithal to get out of the bed. You still can move.
Okay.
So it's movement. It's listening to the music. It's getting into the movement. But it's also about the release. It is about the release of the emotion from the tissues of the body. That's why it's specific to yoga. That's why it's specific to tapping. That's why it's specific to meditation. Because those are tools that we use for transformation. Mm-hmm. It's not the same as weightlifting. It's not the same movement. And there's all kinds of movements that stimulate different areas of the body, right? And so it's very conscious of the movement and conscious of the breathing. So you asked about the other one.
That's the third one.
The third one. So a third one that we focus on, and please edit this accordingly. So it's nutritional health.
It don't have to be in no particular order.
No, I just have to remember them. And I'm going to tell you real quick why. So it was physical, nutritional, mental, emotional, and sexual. But then after my own coaching, it was like, no, just and then I would say transformative health coaching. But she was like, nobody knows what that is. If you say emotional wellness coaching, it's like people know what that is. So that's why I'd be like, because they screwed up my five with that kind of coaching, right? So, but it's nutritional health, it's physical health, it is sexual health. So in sexual health, we deal with the sex act, right? So I do a lot of training, and I'm always in training, right? So in every area of our lives, we have an act. We have who we created ourselves to be to survive circumstances. And that shows up in every area of life, sex being one of them. So when I was in this course and our trainer was like, well, where did you get your sex act? Where are you inauthentic? And I was like, inauthentic? What are you talking about, inauthentic? It's great. She was like, okay, there's an inauthenticity at play somewhere. And I assert that you do know, even if you can't see it. And I was like, ugh. And then we were having this conversation in a couple of weeks, and we were talking about like television programming, and I was like, where did we mostly learn about sex? Either porn, television, movies, or gossipy conversations when we're little and we really don't know what we're talking about, or trauma, or just trauma, sexual abuse, molestations, trauma. So we go to work in that area so that people get freed up in these different domains of health. But we want to get people into the consciousness of creating your life, which is the point of all of this work. It is, am I creating this, or am I just in the default of the way I was programmed and I'm just walking around on automatic pilot? Most of us are just walking around on automatic pilot, even when it comes to our sexual health. And then we don't really talk about the way that sexual health impacts us emotionally, right?
How does it impact us emotionally?
Well, how do you feel about yourself? Are you having sex because you need the money? Are you having sex because is the sex masking conversations that you really don't have the courage to have? Are you having sex because that's what your partner wants and that's what you think you're supposed to do? There's all these different things that we've been programmed to believe about sex. Oh, you better do it, because if you don't, he'll get it from somewhere else. Oh, you better please your man like this. Oh, you better please that woman like, oh, you better be able to do this. So it's all these impressions that got made on us through conversations that we inherited, and we never were in the driver's seat to create our life from scratch.
So there is a blueprint for sex.
Yeah,
healthy sex, I guess.
Well, you get to create what that is, because you're coming in with a pre-made blueprint that somebody else gave you, whether it was porn, TV, movies, or trauma.
There can probably be all 5 areas in which you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And that exists within all 5 areas of health, right? So if I look at nutrition, my eating habits came from my culture, conversations. If you were a little girl and you ate and they thought it was cute that you were pudgy, so now you think eating food and being pleasantly plump, but what is it doing to your heart? What's it doing to your self-esteem? What's it doing to your ability to be active? You know what I'm saying? So it's like we inherited these, we were branded with these things at birth.
How widespread is this, and how cultural based is it?
Well, it's everywhere. It's spread everywhere because it's all just human machinery, right? And everybody's brain pretty much works the same unless you have something else going on, like schizophrenia or something like that. But the brain function of assigning meaning to things, I created myself, very simple things. I don't matter. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. That's just the human condition. That doesn't matter who you are. There was a lot of wealthy people in that room that felt like they didn't matter. There was a lot of wealthy people in that room that felt like they weren't good enough. So you'll be surprised. That's just the human condition. We think that that's our culture, or because we're black, we feel like this. No, most people feel like this. But when we get to our blackness about it, it's our identity. How do I feel about that? You know, and so, but it crosses the board. It's all across the board. Socioeconomic, it doesn't matter.
Do you guys work closely with therapists and doctors? Because, I mean, there has not, some doctors may be educated in these areas. Does the company work closely with both therapists and the medical staff as well?
Sure. So the goal of health coaching is to work in sync with your doctor and whoever your practitioner is. So there's a wonderful sister here that has a mental health facility that I talked to about collaborating services before. for. So being that I have a non-for-profit and I have a for-profit, people can work with me individually, one-on-one, and do their coaching that way. And I coach them through a 28-day detox safely. And we work on all of those 5 domains. We haven't mentioned the other 2 yet, but we work in all 5 domains of health. If you are seeing a therapist and you want to incorporate that work, you absolutely would just let your therapist know, this is the lady that I'm working with, and then we can share information. So there's a way that works, right? So in the coaching side, if you're doing diagnostics and we're doing a whole gamut of things for you, where you're getting labs and things like that, you'll actually have a encrypted website that you will use that's HIPAA compliant, and that we can keep track through electronic medical records with you, your doctor, and us as your coaching team.
That sounds pretty
If
good.
you're working with me as an individual base and we're working on just your emotional wellness, you can feel free to share that with your doctor and share with me what your doctor has recommended. It's important that I know if you're on prescription medication. It's important that I know if you're seeing a therapist. It's important that I know what else you're doing, and we cover all those things inside of the questionnaires when you start.
Now, you're a doctor, licensed medical. What are your qualifications?
So I'm a certified functional medicine health coach with holistic nutrition when I work with Ennis and TC. And outside of that, I'm a certified yoga instructor for 200 hour. And then I've done many, 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 many years of training and transformation for my own personal self. And then I created the womb process to be able to take all of the modalities for healing and put them into one graduated process for people to be able to come through. I like to focus on Black women because, for obvious reasons. And then outside of that, I work with women across the board. I work with people across the board. I have found that in talking about divorce, this is a hot topic for men. And so as I move into more specific categories of things, like that we're focusing on, whether it's weight loss, whether it's, gut health, when I do specific types of workshops and things in the community, I can focus on different types of populations and groups. But I can work with anybody under any of those kinds of certifications. And mostly what I'm doing, I'm sharing my story. I'm sharing my story and connecting people to resources like you. Connect people to resources with this show. I share my story, and then I connect people to those same resources. So the womb process really stands for Women on a Mission Building Bridges. And those bridges are the collaboration. And so it's not just me doing this work with you inside of the full collaboration. It's also you going to people that I will connect you to. So it's getting you in touch with a chiropractor, with a person who does an integrated process for hypnosis, a chiropractor that does NET work, which is neuroemotional technique. I've used all of these things. I used to go to the Motor Clinic. I've done chiropractic care under Best. So, for the last 22 years, I've been taking on all of these different modalities. And what I was really looking to do was to be the gap in what was missing in the conversation about wellness inside of our community. There's a lot of people doing a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. I was looking for, what's missing with those things that our community still doesn't seem to look the way that we want it to look? Right. What's a vision that we can all come together around for our community? And if it starts with the people, which for me, community starts with the people, not with the stuff, not the buildings. It's the people. So if I'm going to work as a person in community economic development, I'm going to start with the people first. And I'm going to bring a level of holistic transformation and get down to the root cause of the issues. And you don't have to have all of these amazing certifications really to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. You just need the relatedness and to be able to care enough to make a difference for people. And that's more important than anything.
How can the viewers reach out to you before we wrap up?
Viewers can reach out to me at ShereetaLacy.com, and you'll have my name somewhere so they can see it.
You better spell that name. I'm
going to spell that name. So it's ShereetaLacy.com. ShereetaLacy.com. They can also reach me at healthyresponsesolutions.com. That is my for-profit business that does coaching. And then they can also reach me at a womb agency, AWOMBB agency.com. There's some videos on there that will tell you all about what I do in the world of nonprofit and why that agency exists. I don't have a problem giving up my phone number because I have a business line. So it's 317-652-3217. 317-652-3217 is a way to reach me directly. And I have email addresses that go along with those
Before we wrap
websites.
up, there's one more question. Is insurance acceptable with your company, because it's still dealing with mental health and wellness? Does your company accept? What are payment options for these individuals to take part in your programs?
So people right now, if they work with me inside of my business for Healthy Response Solutions or in the coaching space, they have to pay. It is a self-pay type of thing. People that will be able to come in on the nonprofit side doesn't cost them anything. And that is really, really through the generosity of the people like CICF and the Indianapolis Foundation that really did an amazing job at making sure that real grassroots nonprofits have access to resources so that we can create sustainability. So when I have funding through that platform, I'm able to offer my services to the community and it doesn't cost them anything.
That sounds like a winner.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time to come and share such a beautiful story. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's called the Womb Agency. Make sure you reach out, support. It's a resource for those that need it. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.